You have the money. You know you have the money. Maybe it's sitting across 3 accounts. A 401k with a number that would have floored you at 40, a brokerage account, maybe some cash on the side. On paper, you're done. You built this. Quietly, consistently, for decades. And yet, Monday morning comes and you're still getting up. Not because you love the job. Not really. But because something keeps whispering that it's not quite time. That there's a little more to shore up. That the market could drop. That you haven't run the numbers enough times. I've watched this pattern more times than I can count. Smart people, disciplined people, people who did everything right. And they're still sitting in the same chair, pulling the same paycheck, telling themselves one more year, not because their spreadsheet says so, but because they don't know what happens if they stop. That's not a financial problem. That's a different kind of problem entirely. This video has 6 questions. If you answer yes to all 6, you are ready to retire. Not in 5 years, not after the next rate cycle, right now. Tomorrow, if you wanted. But here's the part I want you to sit with. 90% of people watching this will stumble on question 4. Not because they're behind, because question 4 exposes the single most common retirement calculation most financial advisors still get wrong, and it's been keeping people like you in a job you've outgrown. So grab something to write with. Let's go through these one at a time. And by the end, you'll know whether you're actually not ready or whether you've just been holding yourself in place. Question 1 starts now. Is your job costing you your health? Not in a dramatic way. Nobody's asking if you're in the ER every month. But think about the last 2 years. The stiffness in your shoulders that doesn't fully go away on weekends. The sleep that used to be deep and now isn't. The Sunday evenings that have a specific weight to them. A low-grade dread you've gotten so used to. You barely notice it anymore. Chronic work stress doesn't announce itself. It just slowly raises the floor on your baseline tension. Your body adapts, you keep going, and one day you realize you can't quite remember the last time you woke up without something already pressing on you. I used to tell clients, push a few more years, maximize the portfolio, give yourself a bigger cushion. I believe that was the responsible advice. I was wrong. One client followed that exact plan, everything by the book. A few months later, he was seriously ill. The portfolio was enormous. He never got to use it. That's changed how I think about this conversation permanently. Numbers on a screen are not the same thing as years you can actually live. The trade-off nobody writes on a whiteboard. You are selling the last years of your functional health for digits you may never spend. Question 1 is a yes if your job is quietly draining more than it's giving back. Question 2, are you postponing your real life? There's a version of your life that keeps getting scheduled for later. The travel that's always next year. The hobbies that got shelved sometime around your mid-40s. The relationships, friends, grandchildren, a spouse that get the leftover version of you at the end of the day. This is the mechanism of deferral. You're not avoiding those things on purpose. You're just waiting for the right moment. Waiting until it feels stable enough, certain enough, complete enough. But complete doesn't come. It moves. That's how it works. Picture it plainly. You come home, your knees ache from sitting in the same chair for 10 hours. You open a spreadsheet for the 15th time this month to run the same retirement projection. And somewhere in the back of your mind, you know you already have the answer. You've had it for a while. You're just not ready to act on it yet. Question 2 is if the life you actually want keeps getting pushed to the back of the calendar. Question 3. Do you know who you are without the job title? This one is uncomfortable. I know that. For a lot of people in this audience, the career isn't just income. It's structure, status, and social connection, all wrapped into one. Your colleagues are your daily human contact. Your title tells people where you stand. Monday through Friday gives the week its shape. If 50% of your social relationships are tied to where you work, and for many people at this stage, that number is accurate, then the day you leave, half of that disappears. Not gradually, immediately. That's not a reason to stay. But it is something you need to walk into with your eyes open. Because people who retire without an answer to this question often find themselves drifting inside of 6 months. Not broke, just lost. Question 3 is a yes if you have, or are actively building, a sense of self that exists outside the org chart. 3 yeses so far means you're closer than you think. But question 4 is where most people hit a wall. Not because they're behind financially, but because they've been measuring the wrong thing for years. Question 4. Do you know what your retirement actually costs? Not your income, your actual lifestyle expenses? This is the one. This is where 90% of people get it wrong. And it's not their fault. For decades, the standard advice has been, you need to replace 80% of your pre-retirement income to retire comfortably. Financial magazines print it. Advisors repeat it. It sounds reasonable. It feels conservative, responsible even. It is the wrong number for most people reading this. That rule was designed for spenders. People whose lifestyle expense tracks closely with their paycheck. But if you're a disciplined saver, someone who's been maxing out retirement accounts and living below your means for 20 years, using your income as the benchmark is a math error with a serious cost. You don't retire on your income. You retire on what your life actually costs. Let me show you what this looks like with real numbers. Take an engineer, 62 years old, earning $150,000 a year. Under the 80% rule, he thinks he needs his retirement portfolio to generate $120,000 annually. He runs the projections, sees the gap, and concludes he needs to keep working. He feels behind. He's not behind. Here's the actual math. Of that $150,000, roughly $30,000 goes to federal and state income taxes. Another $50,000 goes straight into his 401k and other investments. Money he never sees in his checking account. Money he is not spending on his life. That leaves $70,000. That is his real lifestyle number. That is what he needs to maintain the exact life he's living right now. When he retires, the $30,000 in income taxes drops significantly. He's no longer in a high bracket. The $50,000 in retirement contributions stops entirely because he's now drawing down, not accumulating. The number he actually needs to generate is not $120,000. It's closer to $70,000. That's not a small difference. That's a $50,000 gap between the retirement he thinks he needs and the retirement he actually needs. And if he'd kept working to close that imaginary gap, he could have lost 5 to 7 years. Years he'll never get back, working toward a finish line that was never real. I've been close to this conversation with more people than I can count. Smart, capable people who did everything right and then spent years overshooting a target that didn't exist because no one walked them through this calculation. The way to find your real number is simple, not easy. Pull your last 12 months of actual spending, not your gross income, not your savings rate, your spending, mortgage or rent, food, utilities, insurance, travel, subscriptions, all of it. Add a reasonable healthcare buffer. That number, adjusted for inflation, is what your retirement costs. For most disciplined savers in this audience, that number is meaningfully lower than 80% of their current income. Once you see that clearly, the wall moves. But here's the thing, even after the math clicks, Even after you realize the number you've been chasing was never accurate, a lot of people still can't pull the trigger. The fingers still hesitate over the keyboard when it's time to actually send the resignation. That's question 5, and it has nothing to do with money. So the math checks out. You know the number you actually need. You've run it. Maybe you've run it a dozen times. And your finger still won't press send on that resignation email. That's question 5. Not a calculation, a pattern. It goes like this. You tell yourself you'll retire when the market stabilizes. Then it stabilizes, and you tell yourself you'll go when you hit the next round number. You hit it, and suddenly inflation is the concern. So you wait one more year to build a bigger cushion. That year passes. Something else comes up. Each reason sounds rational in the moment. That's what makes this so hard to see clearly. You're not procrastinating, you're being responsible. Except the math closed a while ago. What's actually happening is that one more year has become a way to avoid a decision that genuinely frightens you. I've seen retirement plans that were immaculate. Monte Carlo stress tests running at 99% success rates. Every variable accounted for. And I've watched the husband's hand shake when he went to send the email to HR. That paralysis didn't come from worrying about $10,000. It came from standing at the edge of a structure he'd lived inside for 40 years and not being sure what was on the other side. That fear is not a flaw. It's not weakness. Your brain spent 4 decades learning that a paycheck means safety, unlearning that is not a spreadsheet problem. But here's what I want you to consider. You've been asking, what if I run out of money? That's the wrong question for someone in your position. The question that actually matters is this. If tomorrow were your last day of good health, would you regret that you stayed? Not did you save enough. Not was the timing right. Would you regret the years? That reframe doesn't make the fear disappear, but it changes what you're weighing. You stop comparing your portfolio to a number, and you start comparing your time to what you actually want to do with it. One more year doesn't fix the fear. It just delays the moment you have to face it, while costing you something you cannot buy back. If this video is landing closer to home than you expected, that's worth paying attention to. Subscribe to Wes Investor. This channel exists to cut through the financial noise that keeps people stuck and say plainly what most advisors won't. Now, the psychology is real and it matters, but we can't talk our way past legitimate financial risk. Question 6 is about whether your plan can actually hold up against what's happening in the economy right now. Question 6 is not about fear. It's about arithmetic. Specifically, does your retirement plan hold up against the actual numbers on the ground right now? Not a textbook scenario from 10 years ago, not a projection built on assumptions that no longer apply. Let's start with Social Security. In 2026, the cost of living adjustment came in at 2.8%. For most retirees, that translated to roughly $56 more per month. People saw that number and felt, briefly, like the system was keeping pace. Then the Medicare bill arrived. Medicare Part B premiums in 2026 jumped to $202.90 per month. A 9.7% increase over 2025. The deductible went up to $283. So that $56 monthly increase from Social Security, a significant chunk of it was absorbed before it ever reached a bank account. That's the mechanism. Healthcare inflation does not move at the same speed as general inflation. It never has. And Social Security adjustments are built around a broader price index that systematically underweights what older Americans actually spend money on, which is, disproportionately, medical care. This is not a political point. It's just how the math works, year after year. Now here's where plans fall apart in ways people don't see coming. If your income in retirement pushes past certain thresholds, Medicare doesn't charge you the standard rate. It charges you more through what's called IRMAA. Most people have never heard of it until they get the letter. A couple with combined retirement income over $212,000 can end up paying $628.90 per month each for Part B alone, instead of $202.90. That's a difference of more than $5,000 per year per person. That wasn't in the plan. I don't have a crystal ball on where Medicare goes from here or what the market does this year. Anyone who tells you otherwise is selling something. But I do know how to build a buffer that keeps those variables from forcing you back to work. The structure that holds up a cash reserve covering 12 to 18 months of expenses, so you're not forced to sell investments in a down year. And a Roth IRA you can draw from strategically, because Roth withdrawals don't count toward the income thresholds that trigger IRMAA. That's not a workaround. That's the plan working as intended. Question 6 is a yes if your plan has been stress tested against healthcare costs specifically, not just market volatility. If your numbers still hold after running them through what 2026 actually looks like, you're in a strong position. But if you felt a little uncertain just now, the next section gives you 2 concrete moves you can make immediately. If you got to this point and your plan still has gaps, here are 2 things you can act on before the year is out. The first one is about capturing a window that closes when you turn 64. If you're between 60 and 63 years old right now, Secure 2.0 gives you a catch-up contribution limit that doesn't exist at any other age. In 2026, the standard 401k limit is $24,500. But in that specific age window, you can contribute an additional $11,250 on top of that, bringing your total to over $35,000 in a single year, going straight into a tax-advantaged account. One thing to know, if your income last year was above $150,000, that catch-up portion must go into a Roth 401k after tax dollars. That's not necessarily a bad outcome. Roth money grows tax-free, and as we just covered, it won't count against you when Medicare does the math on your premiums. But you need to make sure your plan is set up correctly to receive it, because not every employer has updated their system to handle this yet. If you're already past 63, this window is behind you, but it may not be behind someone you know. The second move costs nothing. It just requires 3 weeks and some honesty. Before you hand in notice, take a real leave of absence. 3 weeks, fully disconnected, no work email, no checking in, no just one quick call. Live entirely on the budget you've projected for retirement. Grocery bills, utilities, travel, whatever you've planned for. All of it for 21 days. What this does is replace the fear of the unknown with actual data. You'll find out whether your projected number feels tight or comfortable. You'll find out whether you go stir crazy by day 4 or whether you sleep better than you have in years. You'll find out whether one more year is a financial decision or an emotional one. Most people who do this come back with one of 2 reactions. Either they realize they need to adjust the budget, which is valuable information, or they realize they were ready the whole time and the only thing that was missing was the proof. You now have the map. You have the numbers. The next step is yours. 6 questions. That's all this was. Not a 40-page financial plan. Not a meeting with 3 advisors and a Monte Carlo simulation. 6 honest questions about your health, your time, your identity, your actual spending, your psychology, and whether your plan holds up against the real world. Retirement was never about reaching a number. It was about escaping two traps. The first one tells you that you need to replace your paycheck when what you actually need is to cover your life. The second one tells you that one more year will make you feel ready, when the math has already closed and what you're really doing is buying time before a decision that scares you. Most people never name those traps. They just keep working. The money in your account means nothing if your knees are gone by the time you use it. It means nothing if the people you wanted to spend it with have moved on, or if you've spent so long being productive that you've forgotten how to just be present. You built something real. The question is whether you're going to let yourself have it. So, how many of these 6 questions did you answer yes to? Tell me in the comments. I read them. If this video gave you something to think about, subscribe to Wes Investor. This is what we do here. Cut through the noise, look at the actual numbers, and say plainly what most people in this industry won't. I'll see you in the next one.